I wonder if we could ever do an episode as the two Sesame Street Martians. Ah, book, 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 book. Yep, 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 yep. Nope, 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 nope. Bad, bad, book bad.
I played on a fall league co-ed ultimate frisbee team in Chicago for a few years called Mayhem, and it was based on Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem Band. Shout out to my Mayhem folks. It was a really fun group of people, and I think that I got my jersey, and I think I actually put the name of apparently the Yip Yip aliens both have names, and I think I used I really wanted to be Menomina, but there was already a Menomina.
There was already a Menomina.
Yeah, and so
the Yip Yip aliens have names.
I think the I think there is a Yip Yip aliens name.
Yip Yip alien names. Bob and Joe.
Yeah, maybe I went by Bob or maybe Joe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Maybe I never got a name on the back of the thing, but maybe I don't remember getting a name on my jersey, but I definitely remember a discourse about it. It may have even been that there was already a Bob and Joe, and then I was like, well, I'm stumped, because obviously the Waldorf and Statler would be the number one choice, and those were taken.
Yep.
There was a Dr. T.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was a newcomer to the team.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, were you like way down on the Muppet?
No,
depth
they've
chart?
been doing the team for like 5 or 6 years when I showed up.
So like everybody was already established.
Yeah, you had to go you had to go deep into the Muppet depth chart to get.
You would have ended up as fish and rough guy.
Yeah, I don't know who those are.
Oh, it's one guy. Oh. He's sort of a crazed, odd Muppet. He has a big Elizabethan ruff, and he mostly carries fish around, and he throws them at people.
Oh, yeah, I definitely remember the fish getting thrown.
Yeah. Apparently, the first thing the Martians say in their first skit is, "Not Mars. Nope. And then this article says they're likely referred to as Martians because the first line they said was "Not Mars." Which is just, I mean,
well, basically
wonderful.
They're saying like we're not here, we're not at home anymore,
Oh,
not Mars, not
okay.
Mars,
not
because don't they crash and they get out and then they examine various things? Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a theremin doing the sound.
And then
let's see, Fish and Rough Muppet. Who is this guy?
I do sort of enjoy Sam the Eagle.
Okay, that Muppet, Sam the Eagle is wonderful. Have you seen the Muppets Christmas special? Not the Muppet Christmas
Carol.
Not a Muppets Christmas Carol.
No, I don't. I've never seen the Muppets Christmas special.
Muppets Christmas special is a tour de force. So the Sesame Street crew, the Muppets crew heads to Fozzie's aunts for Christmas. And lo and behold, the Muppets also, Sesame Street just gets the memo that they've been invited.
That's fun.
Though Fozzie's aunt has not been alerted to that fact. And she is also not alerted to the fact that the basement gives on to Fraggle. And so Fraggle Rock shows up as well. And there's this one amazing moment when Bert and Ernie are doing The Night Before Christmas. And one of them, probably Bert, because this is sort of what they would do at the time, is dressed up as the narrator's wife. And at one point, Sam the Eagle sticks his head out from behind backstage because, of course, they have also erected a small stage in Fozzie's aunt's living room. Right. And he pokes his head out from backstage and goes, "You are all weirdos."
Sam the Eagle is like a bucket of cold water at all times.
Yeah. He's vaguely Reagan.
Yeah. He's also sort of like, I feel like he's their Eeyore. But yeah, I didn't realize he was Reagan-esque. I see, being an eagle. That would make.
And casting, and say, like the two boys, one of whom is dressing up as a girl and has like sort of an unspoken something partnership roommate thing, and of course the Reagan-esque character would call that weird.
Yeah. There you go. Well, and Bert and Ernie did come out eventually too, but I don't know if that had happened at that point or not. No, I've never seen that one. I do remember the Bears scene. There is a scene in The Muppets Take Manhattan where Fozzie leaves the gang and goes and hangs out with his family, and it's just a bunch of hibernating bears, and he's bored. So then I think he goes to Manhattan to join the Muppets there.
I bet there's a lot. Fozzie's like bored thing is a lot of this action. He sort of like holds something, and
he's kind of like, does anybody want to do anything? Did you hear the one about the sleeping bear? And then they're just like snoring dark cave sounds.
Don't like that one, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
The best visual gag of the Muppets Christmas special is that very early on, Fozzie's aunt warns everybody about an icy patch that is in the doorway. And the entire cast of Sesame Street wipes out as they enter. And it's very funny because nothing is funnier than a Muppet falling down.
Yeah.
Because they're sort of like arms.
Akimbo.
And then they just like disappear down below the frame.
Who from Sesame Street shows up? You get I assume Big Bird and...
Oh, yeah.
Do you get Snuffleupagus? Do you get any of the live action humans too?
I can't remember if you get any live action humans, but it's pretty full bore. Yeah, I think you get almost all
Grover, Elmo,
all three casts.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It's a lot. It's
yeah.
quite a production. Must have been incredible to like, the stage and the puppeteering and all of that must have been amazing. I've never seen the Jim Henson documentary.
There's a new one out
really?
now too that just came out that HBO has a new documentary about it, and I haven't seen it yet.
It's amazing there hasn't been a biopic yet. I'm sure that's coming.
I know.
The same people who make the Queen biopic and the Saturday Night Live biopic, which just came out. I think there's going to be a Muppets biopic.
That would be amazing. Yeah. I kind of think there's be like the way to make it like truly magical would be to do a biopic, but also include the Muppets.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Not a dry eye in the house. Oh my God.
Yeah. How would you include them? Like, would they be... I agree that would be a good way to do it, but like, would you have like Kermit be the narrator, or would they act out as the characters? So like Kermit plays Jim Henson and Fozzie plays Frank Oz.
Frank Oz?
Yeah. And Miss Piggy also like plays like one of the characters and
I think one way that you could do it is you could do sort of Pygmalion, and you could have the Muppets come alive as the and now we're headed away from biopic land. But like you could make a play for the fact that it's sort of the like them coming alive in the imaginations of both Henson, Oz, and the American culture.
Jim Henson goes home after a long night of pitching everybody his puppet TV show. Gets home, he's dejected, and then Kermit like cooks him dinner and cheers him up, and then Fozzie.
You know who should? We should write this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd it go today, Jim? Yeah.
It sucked. It like, Jesus Christ, Frank and I were stuck under a goddamn folding picnic table for 3 hours trying to get the eye movement correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Oh, how was the bar mitzvah? Yeah. Yeah, like,
oh, geez.
Yeah.
You seem a little downbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, I could see it tremendous, but this is kind of a brilliant idea. Of course, the IP for this would cost like $1 million.
Oh my God. Well, you got to go to Disney now.
Yeah.
You either have to like pay Disney $1 billion or somehow
Disney would have
them.
to be the production. Yeah, they'd have to be the house.
You'd have to pitch them and then spend the next 3 years fighting tooth and nail.
You know who might like the idea though? If you could get him behind it as Frank Oz. maybe Frank, you know.
Well, this is a cool idea. It'd be fun to just, it would just be fun to just write it.
Yeah.
It'd
You
be
could,
fun
you know,
to-
what you could also do is a fictionalized version. You write a screenplay that's based on a young puppeteer in the late 1960s and his creations.
yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
sort of a fictionalized version of the story.
Well, speaking of deeply sad, nostalgic stage plays that were intended to be comedies, let's talk about The Cherry Orchard.
Cherry Orchard, I'm just imagining like which Muppets would play whom in the Cherry Orchard.
Fozzie is for
Furs.
sure either
Or Gaev.
Fears or Gaev. Yeah, I actually think Gaev. I was going to say Yepi Kodov, but no, Yepi Kodov is Gonzo.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
For sure. Miss Piggy is Luboff.
The young scholar is Kermit, I think, or Lopakin.
Yeah,
Maybe Kermit could be Lopakin, actually.
Let's see. I like Kermit as Trofimov. Who would be Lopakin? You know, you need sort of the the Swedish chef.
Well,
the Swedish chef is Lopakin.
This actually foreshadows our conversation because I think I have a non-traditional view of Lopakin and this story,
Marvelous.
and to me,
Yeah.
he's very much the hero of the book.
Yes, correct. I think you're right. I totally agree with you.
Well, everybody is flawed, and nobody is a monster. But he's the character who I find the most sympathetic. He's the only one I find likable, to be honest. But maybe we should go into recap first before we do.
Yes, let's do it. I put in my little joke notes about Chekhov's structure, but it's funny. Your notes about the plot and the recap sort of mirror my joke notes.
It is a minimalistic plot. It is mini plot. The plot could be like they arrive, not much happens, the auction, they leave. You know.
Yeah. Arrive, nothing happens, everything happens, departure.
Yeah.
That is the standard arc of every famous Chekhov play.
Yeah. Okay. I see. You added this. So, well, let's do the character. I think we should do the characters first.
Yeah. If you're, I think you're right that it is structure and plot light, but it is character heavy.
Yeah. So characters. I listed them in order of appearance rather than in order of billing.
That's right.
So the first person we meet is Lopakin or Lopakin. He is a merchant. He is a former peasant. And he is there to greet the noble family he knows is returning from Paris. And he's very fond of them because Lyubov, who we'll hear about in a moment, once did him a kindness when he was a young peasant. And so he has quite regard for this family, maybe arguably more regard than they deserve. And I place him as like late 30s, maybe early 40s, something like that. And he is speaking with Dunyasha.
The maid, but Dunyasha is sort of like Lubov has been away from the estate for some time, and the estate is not in great shape. And so the servants don't actually have a lot to do. Yeah. And Dunyasha is sort of a pretty young girl, and she's a little uppity because she doesn't have to work much. And so Lopakin kind of lectures her about the fact that she should know her place. We meet thereafter pretty quickly after Dunyasha, Yepi Kodov, who is a local clerk, who talks a lot. He is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Well, and he also alludes to Shakespeare a lot, including at one point basically saying, should I kill myself or not? That's the question I ask every day.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we meet Yepi Kodov, and I'll kick it back to you for the next couple.
So we have Furs, who is an old servant, and he has accompanied the noble family. Has he or not? No, he's also he's been
still
sticking
there.
around, and so he hasn't seen them for a while. He's very fond of the noble family, and he is nostalgic for the old days of serfdom, when serfs were slaves and rich people still had their money and everybody knew their place. He is also a fool. And he is a nostalgic fool, and Yepi Kodov is a sort of absurd, eclectic fool. So Charlotta is the governess. She is German. I think she is eccentric, and in my sort of like trying to kind of understand the world, it's like this estate is in like Georgia, or maybe it's like this estate is in like rural Illinois, and then she's from like Atlanta because she's German, and then they were all hanging out in New York, which is Paris. So because she's eccentric, and maybe the eccentricity has something to do with her being German, she's actually kind of talented. She doesn't amount to much, but then again, almost nobody in this story does.
Yeah. We also meet Varya, who is the adopted daughter, and older than Anya, the younger daughter. And she plays the role basically of housekeeper. Her mother, Lubov, has been gone for 5 years, and Varya is the one who kind of really keeps the place organized. She keeps the books, she looks after the servants, she has all the keys. And she is sort of set against Semenyov Pishchik, who is a neighboring landowner who is also broke, who is also always grubbing for money, and is just kind of generally a pest around the estate.
Anya is the youngest daughter. I sense that she is a great beauty, even though she's not really described that way in the notes. She has been with her mother, Lyubov, in Paris. And then there's Lubyov. She is the matriarch. I place her at about 50, although I gather she is sort of a handsome 50. She still attracts men. She is a romantic. She is nostalgic. She has a emotional relationship to her country estate, the cherry orchard. And she's a complex character.
Yeah. She's dealt with a lot of loss, some self-inflicted through her choices of partners, and then some just straight up tragic. Her son Grisha has drowned about 5 or 6 years before the start of the play, which is the precipitating event that sort of gets her out of the estate and off on kind of a Skid Row journey of ne'er-do-well suitors and husbands who generally leech her of money and then get sick. And when Anya kind of tracks her down in Paris, it's a pretty bleak situation that Anya paints. It's tawdry for a noble woman to have sort of fallen this low.
And she is represented as being broke, although it's unclear just how broke she is, because she does still seem to be like paying for everything that everybody is doing. So she's rich person broke, and you know, we'll learn more later.
Yeah. We also meet Yasha, her manservant, who has traveled with her for quite a while now. And he's kind of a ne'er-do-well servant. He is a little lecherous. We know that Yepi Kodov is in love with Dunyasha, the servant. But early in Act 2, we get a sense that maybe Yasha and Dunyasha are fooling around, perhaps.
And Yasha doesn't have any noble intentions with regard to fooling around. And then there's Petya Trofimov, the lifetime graduate student. Again, sort of idealistic, not really offensive, but also not particularly inspiring. And he seems to have an attraction with Anya, although he doesn't do anything about it. So it's kind of unclear whether he does or not, but they seem to be set up to be romantically attracted to one another. And that's all the major characters. There are a few other sort of like, I think, characters who might appear for a page, like the station master and a guy who wanders by.
At the party. But yeah, it's mostly this is pretty much it.
Yeah.
And as you said, the action of the play involves a lot of inaction as Lopakin pretty much hectors the family over the course of 3 acts. to do something about the impending auction of the cherry orchard. They steadfast. He has a solution to cut the cherry orchard down and parcel up the land and lease it out as summer homes. Probably also having to knock down the estate house, which means there's pretty much not going to be anything left. But they would be able to save their. It's a sound business idea.
Yeah. And they would maintain their fortune. They would have some income. It's also possible that they could workshop Lopakin's plan. Maybe they could cut down half of the cherry orchard and have half the income. I mean, he is sort of like, work with me, people. Come on, like let's talk. Like, I can get you a loan. He's trying to help these people who are of a different social class than him, basically escape poverty, and they kind of ignore him. And Lyubov is not exactly like unkind to him, but sort of ignores him. It reminds me of sort of like you're talking to somebody and they appear to be listening, and then their eyes light up because they got a text from the person they have a crush on, and then you realize they weren't listening to you the entire time. And Gaev, the brother, we didn't mention Gaev. Gaev is Lyubyev's brother, and he is just a rich, foppish buffoon, in my opinion. Maybe he's supposed to be sort of charmingly tragic in his nostalgia, but he is straight up mean to Lopakin. And that's Act One. Is they arrive. Lopakin first sets out the stakes. The cherry orchard is going to be sold. Offers the rope ladder. You can sell it. Yeah. They sort of ignore him. They get interrupted. Act Two happens outside. Has some more
near the orchard. We move into the actual physical location.
And I think Act Two is summer, whereas Act One is spring. Like that.
Yeah, it's late May when it opens, and then Act Two is 3 weeks later. So we're like just on top of the auction by the end of Act Two.
And then Act Three is the sort of reception, and then the auction itself. And at the end of Act Three, we learned that Lopakin has gone ahead and purchased the estate, which is a big deal for him. He was born into abject poverty. His father was a serf, essentially enslaved on that very estate. He has gritted and grinded and figured out a way to make enough money to buy the estate that his family was bound to. He tried to keep the rich people there. They spurned him, so he just bought it. And then the fourth act, all the rich people go back to Paris, and Lopakin starts cutting down the cherry trees.
Yep. Yeah. It's
and they leave furs behind.
They leave. Yep. They literally leave Russia's imperial past to die on the front door of the estate.
Or feudal past.
Feudal past. Yeah.
The empire is still alive and well at this point, but the
czarist past, I guess, is what I'm looking for there. But so I mean, you've heard me wax on and on about these plays for a long time, and my question is just what was your experience of reading this? What was that like?
Well, as I texted to you, I took it to the beach one Saturday afternoon and read the first 3 acts in about 2 hours on the beach, and then wanted to get out of the sun, so came home and read the last act that night. Reading it the first time, I found it difficult, and I don't know if it's the translation or if it's the story, or if it's just the fact that I think this play has so much space for interpretation that there's so much room, I think. I've only read the one translation, David Mamet's translation. There is so much room for how the actors and directors can interpret the mood of the play and even kind of the tone. Whether the characters are meant to be noble or buffoonish, whether the characters are meant to be sympathetic or unsympathetic, whether they're meant to be tragic or funny, that I found it very hard at all times to really tell. And I found that I didn't really care about any of them except Lopakin. He was the only one I kind of liked. there were certain moments in the play the first time and I've now read it like 1 3/4 times. Like I got all the way through it, and then I started reading it again and kind of skipped around, but I didn't quite read the whole thing a second time. There are moments I really like. There's moments where I pick up sort of the humor of what's going on. David Mamet has made a lot of decisions about having the characters interrupt each other, which I'm not sure was in the Chekhov, but certainly there's often intended comic effect where two characters are talking about something and then a third one interjects and the third one loses the train of thought and starts talking to the second one, but then answers the first one again on that thread. And I liked those moments a lot. I could sense that there's deep irony in this story. I could sense there's deep sadness in the story, and I could sense that there were kind of funny moments. But I have to admit, I found it was more like I was reading an interesting history text. This is important. I wasn't swept up by the story. And I, at first, was sort of annoyed at Chekhov, but I think I have to trust the literary world that there's something brilliant here, and think that either the reason I wasn't entertained has more to do with my limitations as a reader, A, or B, maybe it's not a great translation, or C, maybe this is a thing that you really need to see it the first time.
Yeah.
Because I do think the characters are really open to interpretation, and I think that if I watched a performance of it, there's a lot of subtext there are a lot of decisions the actors could be making about subtext, and I didn't have that. I didn't have that visual. Yeah. So there's moments where I'm like, is this funny? Is this serious? Is that an insult? Is that an agreement? Is that a disagreement? And I just didn't know. And I also wonder, after I read the whole thing, I read Mamet's introduction, and I find myself suspicious of his interpretation of the play. So that's my experience. Now, I should say, I am delighted to have read it in the sense of edification, and I'm very excited to watch a performance of it.
Yeah,
because I think it will come alive for me in a way. And finally, I do feel very invested in Lopakin's story. And a little bit of research I've done suggested that contemporary audiences who would have been kind of like Russian nobles saw him as kind of a villain. And I see him as a hero, and so I wonder if that was intended by Chekhov or if that has more to do with my modern American sensibility.
No, I think you're right. I mean, like, Lopakin is a member of the bourgeoisie, which Chekhov was as well.
Right.
And, like, Chekhov is literally dying as he is writing The Cherry Orchard. It's the last play. He dies 6 months after its premiere. He has tuberculosis as he's writing it. And you get the deep ambivalence about the social classes of Russia in Chekhov's sort of setting of Lopakin against this like sort of fading aristocracy. Contemporary audiences would have seen him as like the heel, but like plenty of other people in the audience would have seen him as the champion.
Well, and he is insensitive at moments. I mean, I love the scene where he's doing his victory dance about purchase, and I it's not that he's cruel. He doesn't want Lobov to suffer and Gaev to suffer. Well, maybe Gaev a little bit, but he deserves it. But he just can't help it. He's so happy, and I can't help but be really happy for him. And I do think there are interesting questions because you're right. He's bourgeoisie. He's not proletariat. And is he really just building a new aristocracy for himself by becoming a kind of landlord? Or is he building cottages for the new middle class to live in and to enjoy? Is he putting essentially what has become an economic waste of the land, a cherry orchard? Apparently, nobody buys the cherries anymore. Now, I don't know why they don't buy cherries. Maybe there's a glut of cherries. Maybe cherries don't travel very well.
The trees have stopped bearing. That's they in the first act there's like sort of an aside that like now every 3 or 4 seasons they bear a crop.
Yeah,
but the
that's what
cherries are
happens when
small
fruit
and-
trees age.
Yeah.
Is they become
And Fears is like, well, it used to be this like amazing cherries. The serfs did this thing with them, and they were
Preserve
sweet
them,
and piquant
Right,
and preserved.
right.
And somebody's like, how did they do it? Nobody knows now.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, that is an economically useless piece of land in a country that has economic problems. And so for Lopakin to try to turn that into something valuable, to me, seems smart. But, it's complicated, and I think the economics are only alluded at. Chekhov is more interested in the social drama, so you don't fully understand what's going on. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I'm curious, how did you first encounter this on the page, or did you first encounter it on stage?
I think it was a really astute choice of the way that as a freshman in drama school, the way that this gets used at where I went to school is the juniors who are taking the directing class, usually juniors, sometimes seniors, but it takes until around junior year to rack up the necessary prerequisites to take directing. And when you're in the directing class, your assignment is to direct one of the scenes of the play. And as your cast, you get the freshmen.
Oh, that's fun.
You get the freshmen who have just showed up.
Fun.
Because as a freshman, you're not allowed to audition for the department plays.
Yeah.
Like you sort of have to pay your dues.
But you're going to do the Cherry Orchard.
You get a little crack at a little bit of acting.
I feel like I would enjoy interpreting one of these characters more than merely reading the play.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the story is very interesting, to be honest. Like I don't really care about them that much. But then if I have the challenge of actually trying to sort of figure out what does this character want in this moment? Why did they say that thing? There's just that. It's all subtextual and it's all being hinted at in very interesting little ways. I feel like that would actually be a really fun way to be introduced to this play.
And I was Lopakin in my
there you
little
go.
scene. I got to be Lopakin. And I remember just being like, what are these lines about frost? Like what, like who cares that there's 3 degrees of frost? What the, what is, and I just remember being perplexed.
That made sense
And
to me
then-
because it's a late frost, and people always comment about aberrant weather events too. So that I got that. I was like, oh yeah, that's what you do when you're sitting around waiting for the rich people to show up. You're like, weird weather we're having.
And I just remember being like, I don't really get it. And sort of similar to what you're talking about like, what is this? And then during the process of like working with the junior or senior who was directing my scene and then seeing the others, suddenly realizing how absolutely, like what you just said, that it is all subtextual, and the brilliance of it comes from the fact that like, this is very similar to the way that, if not the way that people talk in our contemporary times, at least the nature, the sort of asinine nature, the absurdist nature of most everyday dialogue, and like, the thing that you're talking about, the comedy of like 2 characters talking and a third character, it's like, it's, from this play, you both get Who's on First and Waiting for Godot.
Yeah.
Like those are the direct descendants of Anton Chekhov.
I have a show and tell. I want to play it for you now because
Awesome.
I found
what
I consider to be another direct descendant as I was reading this. So this was when I read this play and I got through it the second time. I was like, this is very familiar to me. Where have I heard this before? And this is what I came up with.
This was
Yeah, man, it really tied the room together.
this was a valued.
Yeah.
What tied the room together, dude?
My rug.
Were you listening to the dude's story, Donnie?
Walter.
Were you listening to the dude's story?
I was bowling.
So you have no frame of reference here, Donnie. You're like a child who wanders in the middle of a movie and wants to know.
Walter, what's the point, man?
There's no reason. Here's my point, dude. There's no fucking reason why these.
Yeah, Walter, what's your point?
Huh?
Walter, what is the point? look, we all know who is at fault here. What the fuck are you talking about?
Huh? No, what the fuck are you? I'm not. We're talking about unchecked aggression here,
What the fuck is he talking
My
about?
rug.
Forget it, Donnie. You're out of your element.
Walter, the Chinaman who peed on my rug, I can't go give him a bill. So what the fuck are you talking about?
What the fuck are you talking about? The Chinaman is not the issue here, dude. I'm talking about drawing a line in the sand, dude. Across this line, you do not. Also, dude, Chinaman is not the preferred nomenclature. Asian American, please.
Walter, this isn't a guy who built the railroads here. This is a guy.
What the fuck are you
Walter, he peed on my rug.
He peed on the dude's rug.
Donnie, you're out of your element. Dude, the Chinaman is not the issue here.
So who?
Jeff Lebowski, the other Jeffrey Lebowski, the millionaire.
That's fucking interesting, man. That's fucking interesting.
Plus, he has the wealth, obviously, and the resources, so that there's no fucking reason why his wife should go out, no money, all of her time, and then they come and they pee on your fucking rug. Am I wrong?
No.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, but
Okay then. That rug really tied the room together, did it not?
fucking A.
This guy peed on it.
Donnie, please.
You know, this is the fucking guy. I could find this fucking Lebowski guy.
His name is Lebowski? That's your name, dude.
This is the guy who should compensate me for the fucking rug. His wife goes out and owes money all over town and they pee on my rug?
They pee on your fucking rug?
They peed on my fucking rug.
That's right, dude. They peed on your fucking rug.
Oh my God. It's like the most amazing, convoluted game of dialogue football that's ever been written.
And the Cherry Orchard, at least David Mamet's writing with all the interjections and the interruptions and the ellipses, feels very similar. The only difference is that in this one, Walter, who's sort of the Lopakin-like figure trying to convince one of the characters to take some action, is actually successful. Like in The Big Lebowski, what would have happened is that conversation would have gone in the Cherry Orchard, the conversation would have just gone nowhere, and we would have moved to John Turturro licking the bowling ball without anything being settled. Where in this case, actually, Jeffrey Lebowski decides to do something about his rug. By the way, we'll put a trigger offensive language warning into that
Nice.
too.
There's
into that
one.
Offensive language.
I'm proud of myself that I was like, it's got to be the Coen brothers because it is Chekhovian, and it is, I would push back a little bit and say that in Act 2, Trofimov's blustering monologue about Russia is sort of Walter, and Anya, like the dude, begins to see it. The all Russia is our orchard. That
was one of my favorite moments. Even though I find him ridiculous, I was like, you're ridiculous, but you're not wrong. It's kind of like Walter. Like, am I wrong? No, you're not.
No, you're just an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Trofimov is an asshole.
Yes.
Trofimov stands in for that sort of like snobbish
I meet people
inactivity.
Like this all the time. I mean, it's like maybe not all the time, but I have certainly. There was an excerpt from a TV show I heard recently, a comedy TV show that's about a fake public radio show. I think and I don't remember the exact details, but the two characters are having an argument, and one character is being accused of being insensitive to the poor. And she says, I don't think that's fair. I volunteer every Saturday giving food, to provide food for the homeless. And they're like, excuse me. You volunteer every Saturday to give food to unhoused people. And I'm like, that's Trofimov. Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to correct someone's nomenclature, which we also got in that clip, without even acknowledging that actually the person he's arguing with is maybe actually taking action to improve the circumstances of the people who he is indignant on behalf of, and
he's the Schrodinger's douchebag.
Yeah.
That kind of thing of the like, oh, excuse me, but like making corrections, but like completely like not going to take action themselves.
Right.
And yeah,
that's actually the scene I want to drill down on later.
The All Russia in the
actually,
orchard.
I think it's right after that. It's the leave. I want us to read it with two different moods, and I want us to swap characters. It's a little bit later when he says the leaves are this was built by slaves, and you can see their faces in every blossom or every tree or something like that. Which I thought that was the best line of the play. And
it's very Chekhovian to like situate some of the best writing of the most lyrical writing in a character that the audience is very right to suspect.
Yeah, I think and it's also kind of like Walter Solchek too. He's a blustering asshole, but you can't hate him. Like he's ridiculous. And he doesn't stand up for what he believes in. But again, everybody in this play is kind of pathetic, too, in a way. And nobody is evil. None of them are monsters, even though they're all flawed, as I said before.
You dislike Gaev, but I find him less offensive. And I think my example would be the moment that he decides to eulogize a bookcase. And and then sort of catches himself like later is like, oh, I sounded like such an idiot, and like here I am like talking about the fact that this bookcase is 100 years old and we could give it a jubilee birthday, and oh dear bookcase, thank you so much for guarding the and I mean Gaev is again a fool. They're all foolish. And the real problem, like Gaev is sort of like your pretty offensive uncle who like it's his fault, but it's also not his fault. And like it would be great if Gaev were to change, but he's not going to.
Right.
I mean I think it's very intentional that he and Lopakin are really set against each other.
They are kind of opposites, and that the whole discussion of the bookshelf happens very shortly after on page 19, when Lopakin's in the middle of his pitch to save the cherry orchard, and Gaev just interrupts him and says, "Excuse me, but will you stop talking drivel?" And it's
such a jerk.
He's a jerk. At one point, he says, "Shut up, Furs," and I don't know, maybe his. Again, this could be, you could play a character who says those things in a nasty way, and you could also play that where he says those things in a sort of twinkle in his eye, oh, please shut up, like a sort of a more gentle way. But
you could do like an avuncular playing of him, like he could be laughing. Oh, could you?
What is this drivel you're talking about?
Stop talking this drivel.
Like
he could be.
At best, he's merely insensitive and clueless, as opposed. But to me, he comes across as cruel, as classist, and as ridiculous. And of all that, I wanted to ask you. Asked me about my affinities. We agree that we both like Lopakin. Are there other characters who you feel any affinity or sympathy, or not sympathy? I feel sympathy to all of them, but any other characters who you actually like?
Varya.
Oh, interesting.
So much affinity for Varya, because Varya would fix it if she could.
Yeah.
Like Varya knows how ridiculous her mother is. She can see that Anya is in need of protection, but that also Anya is like sort of unable to help herself. She's a little mother henish, but she is trying with all of her might to hold everything together. And the probably the best. She
has no real levers to pull.
No, she doesn't.
As a woman and as an adopted daughter, she has very little power. All she can sort of do is try to influence things.
Yeah, she has very little power, but she has all the responsibility.
Yeah. What do you make of her romance with Lopakin?
It's
I
so
put
sad.
romance
It's
in
so
quotations.
sad. I mean, like probably the best production of this that I've seen in Act 3. Lopakin was so drunk. Like the actor playing him just did such an amazing job of like this sort of alternating like whirlwind of like glee and then also like asking for forgiveness and just like those, very maudlin peaks and valleys of emotion that that drunks express.
Yep.
And Varya's moment when she just pulls the keys off of her belt and throws them at his feet was just the theater just went silent.
Yeah.
And it was, and like you really, the themes of the play are played out in that non-romance. And you get the sense that, if Lopakin could just get his like emotional shit together, because there's that horrible moment when he says that he's going to ask her, he's basically going to get his nerve up to ask her out. And they have, some non-small talk, and he's like, I think that's my carriage. And he's gone.
So one interpretation of that is romantic cowardice, which is a thing that happens, right? Mm-hmm. You have a crush on somebody, or you're attracted, and you just don't have the courage to say it. Sometimes for good reason, or I kind of got the sense that he actually doesn't have an attraction for her, and
it's
that
all
if he's
made
attracted,
up. Yeah.
That they're all just kind of shipping the two of them. Maybe she likes him, although that also wasn't entirely clear to me, because like whenever Lyubov brings it up with Varya, she's like, yeah, sure. And I can't tell if it's yes. When there's a moment when Lyubov says to Lopakin, oh, you really should propose to Varya, and he says, yeah, I really should. And I can't tell if it's yeah, I should, or if it's yeah, I should.
Yeah,
and it could be either.
It could be any of them.
Right. And the one thing I think I agree with David Mamet is that all the clues to me suggest that if Lopakin's attracted to anybody, it's Lyubov. I know, and he's sort of in between them in age, is my sense. So he's probably older than Varya and probably younger than her, but she was this angelic figure who cleaned up his bloody nose after his father beat him up.
It's terrible.
And said, don't worry, little peasant, it'll be okay by the time you get married. That's the act of kindness she probably doesn't remember. It's funny because it's kind, but it's also patronizing and diminishing. It's not, I think knowing Chekhov as I do, that the fact that she says something a little annoying, even as she's doing something kind, is probably not an accident. It's it probably says something about, and the fact that also she and Gaev don't listen to him when he's giving the advice. They don't really respect him. And even though she's fine with him marrying her adopted daughter, he's not quite one of them.
No, he's definitely not.
And he
one
never
of them.
will be.
Yeah,
right.
There's
and
no
he's
chance.
Not, and when he's talking about mortgages and interest rates, and just like who is this peasant who's in here flashing his money around?
Yeah, who's this wheeler dealer?
Yeah, talking to us about our business, and that's the attitude. And I actually thought, I told you I was not super entertained, but I felt that very powerfully throughout. And maybe that's why I related to Lopakin more than anybody else in this book.
Yeah, I mean, Varya and Lopakin, I as the sappy romantic that I am, I definitely, I like the reading that, for whatever reason, whether he likes her or not, that she is hoping.
Yeah.
And you get the sense that it probably wouldn't be a marriage of passion. It would be a marriage of convenience, and it would make sense. But it
also would let them save the cherry orchard. too,
Yeah.
right? You know, because essentially, if he buys it, then Lubov could live there, or at least visit whenever she wants.
Yeah, she could live in the mother-in-law cottage.
She could live in the mother-in-law cottage, right? Exactly. And Gaev could live in the brother-in-law cottage. Play billiards all the time.
And maybe play billiards. So you get the sense that his billiard days are long past. You know, that
But
it's
he
all
remembers them well. It's all just for the glory. I'm trying to find the part where Lubov says you should propose, and he's like, yeah, I should. But what's your question about the guitar? I would like to get to the reading at some point.
Yeah, so you know, there is a moment towards the end of the second act when they're all out in the orchard. Our paired reading, we're gonna have to do some inventiveness because I left my copy on the airplane. So maybe you can maybe you can snap some pictures and send them to me or something
I'll
like
start
that.
doing that right now.
But in, you know, almost towards the end of the chapter, there is a stage direction that says, "They all sit deep in thought, silence. Only fear's quiet muttering can be heard. Suddenly there is a distant sound, as if from the sky, the sound of a breaking string, dying away, sad."
Oh yeah.
And that shows up in different forms and different translations. Sometimes it's described as a guitar string or something like that. But they all always say something as if from the sky, as if there's like a gigantic string that snaps somewhere up in the sky. And you know, like what's it doing there? In the play, it's sort of given I don't know, you know, something snapped a few miles away, and you know, but what you since it feels important.
Yeah. Okay, so I found that section. Gaev is having reading some poetry. "Nature, marvelous one, and thou, whom we call mother, thou shines all around within her." Varaya interrupts him. Trofimov says something, "Better 3 cushions off the white." I don't know what that means.
It's another billiards. Yeah, he's making fun of Trofimov is making fun of Gaev. He's like, you know, like, oh, you know, better get back to your billiards talk.
Stick to talking about billiards.
Yeah.
You know, stop reading poetry. Yeah, they're kind of always needling each other too. Gaev, yeah, all right, I am silent. I'm shutting up. All sit silently. Only furs is heard muttering. Suddenly a sound is heard as if from the sky, the sound of a snapped string dying away mournfully. What's that? Lepakin, wire snapped, a bucket falling in a mine. Far, Gaev, perhaps a bird of some kind, a heron. Trofimov, a horned owl. Bilbov, it's somehow first, just before the catastrophe. There was the same. An owl screeched, and the samovar whistled all night, with no fire under it. The catastrophe? The liberation. And it's buried in a joke, right? The joke being that Furs likes serfdom.
It's great.
I mean, whenever you have an off-stage sound in this play, it's a foreshadowing of something. So I think it's foreshadowing like the broken chain with the past, the broken string. But why is it there, and what is it? And why did it? I mean, it feels sort of Big Lebowski-like to me, where it's sort of like another writer would have the characters all sort of react in dread and fall silent, and that would be the end of the chapter. And they're just sort of like, oh, the end of our aristocratic era is being foreshadowed around us. Oh, that was a pretty good billiard shot. Fears, you old rascal. You know, it's like they're sort of, I don't know. I don't know quite what to make of it other than they're oblivious to the harbingers of change.
That are coming. Yeah.
In the same way that they're oblivious to Lepakin when he's, you know, trying to give them some advice about what to do.
You know,
best guess. But what
it makes me think about that. Well, I think that's a great answer. I've always been the thing that's always struck me as odd is it seems for like a writer that relies so much on subtext and like you're saying, like you could play this text in 100 different ways. And that's sort of the amazingness of it. It always struck me as this weirdly expressionistic moment. It's like if August Strindberg kind of wandered along and dropped a little moment into a Chekhov play, because it really feels like it could be all of these like symbolic or, figurative kinds of things. And I really like your reading, because like what you're saying is that it is that and they miss it.
Well, and I mean, maybe it has a literal meaning in the world of the play as well. But it's also possible. Yeah, I mean, I like Lepakin, so he's like, oh yeah, a cable snapped.
Yeah.
That might very well be what it is.
But
But
he has a very practical answer.
I think that everybody's reaction to it is as telling, I think, as whatever this phenomenon is supposed to be.
Yeah, Lubov's. It's somehow unpleasant. Like she can't even put her finger on it in the same way that she can't.
The same way she reacts to news of the cherry orchard being sold. Gaev suggests it's a heron, which herons sound like rah. Trofimov says a horned owl, and those two birds sound completely different from one another. So one of them is wrong. A horned owl sounds like woo-hoo.
Yeah.
And Furs says it's an omen. Furs is maybe the closest to being accurate. It is apparently some sort of omen. I
love that in the version I'm cribbing from, because I don't have my Mamet copy. I actually like this better than the Mamet one. Furs says, "It was the same before the catastrophe. The owl screeched and the samovar went on whistling," which I love, because that sounds like something from a bad Cold War spy flick. And then
Except
Gaev...
for the samovar is whistling despite there's no fire, right? Which is supernatural, right? It's basically like the tea kettle is boiling,
yeah, exactly.
even though it's the stove
And
is
Gaev
cold.
says, "Before what catastrophe?" And the only thing that Furs said is freedom. Instead of the liberation, which is a little blander.
Yeah.
And just Furs just saying just this sort of despondent. I mean, it's like Oscar the Grouch. That's who. Yeah, Furs would be played by Oscar the Grouch.
Yeah, definitely. This might take a moment, but this is the last thing I have on my agenda too. So, I would like you. This is the direction I'm going to be Anya, and you'll be Trofimov, and then we'll swap. But for the first one, I would like you to play it as Trofimov is a show-off.
Yeah.
And he's trying to impress Anya with his intellectual acuity. And I'm going to play Anya as she sees through it and is sort of annoying but tolerating it, just sort of trying to endure this bore. So, Anya, isn't it fine today?
Yes, it...
And you know what you've done to me, Petya? I loved it so dearly, our cherry orchard, our garden, but now somehow it's different, and you speak... I cannot love it as before.
All Russia is our orchard. Our country is vast and contains many things. If you reflect, Anya, your ancestors owned slaves who worked the land, pruned the trees. Each leaf on the tree represents their lives. The leaves blow, and it's as if human beings are speaking to you. And they're saying they've been deprived and and suffered to create this idyll that your family enjoys. You live on credit. You live on the work and off the sufferings of people you wouldn't allow into your home. We're behind the times, 200 years, and we can't live in the past, and yet we have no plan for the future. We philosophize, which is to say, we gasp from too much leisure. Broken free, in order to live in the world, we must atone. First, to regain that which we have lost. We have lost our place. We must atone. We must atone. We must confess and atone and be done with it. Atone by suffering, by work, by continual hard labor. Do you understand?
I do.
Show me you understand.
My house is not my house. I'm leaving it. I swear it.
Throw the keys down the well and walk away.
How well you said that.
trust me, Anya. I'm not yet 30. I know I am young and I'm still a student, but I've seen a lot. I've endured much. Hunger, summer and winter. I've been very sick, worried, wondering, everywhere. Day and night, I felt it. It's coming. It's throbbing in me. Happiness. I see it, Anya.
Oh, look, the moon is rising.
Yes, the moon is rising. And a better time is coming, a happier time, nearer and nearer. Perhaps we will live to see it. But if we do not, it doesn't matter. Others will after us.
Anya, where are you?
Ugh, Faria, will you please?
I know. Well, let's go to the river.
Yes. Then let's go.
Anya, Anya.
It's like the other nuns calling for Maria. Maria or Tony.
I think you did better. I think your Trofimov was better than my Anya. But let's do role reversal
Okay.
now. I'm gonna try to do Trofimov as sincere and thoughtful and humble, and you're gonna try to do Anya as on Trofimov's wavelength.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah.
admiring, thoughtful, just sort of thinking aloud with him. Why don't we start it? Isn't it fine today?
It's so fine today.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And you know what you've done to me, Petya? I loved it dearly, our cherry orchard, our garden, but now somehow it's different, and you speak, and I cannot love it as before.
Well, all Russia is our garden. Our country is vast, and it contains many things. If you reflect on your ancestors owned slaves who worked the land, pruned the trees. Every tree, every leaf on the tree represents their lives. The leaves blow, and it is human beings speaking to you. They're saying they've been deprived and lived and suffered to create this idol your family enjoys. You live on credit. You live on the work and the suffering of people you would not allow into your house. We are behind the times, 200 years, and cannot live in the past, and yet we have no plans for the future. We philosophize, which is to say we gasp from too much leisure. Broken free in order to live in the world, we must atone. First, to regain that which we have lost our place. We must atone. We must atone. We must confess and atone and be done with it. Atone by suffering, by work, by only continual hard labor. Do you understand?
I do.
Show me you understand.
The house is not my house. I'm leaving it. I swear it.
Throw the keys down the well. Anya, throw the keys down the well and walk away.
How well you said that.
Trust in me, Anya. I know I'm not yet 30. I know I am young. I'm still a student, but I've seen much. I've endured much. Hunger, summer and winter. I've been sick, worried, wandering everywhere. Day and night, I felt it, and it is coming, throbbing in me. Happiness. I see it, Anya.
The moon is rising.
Yeah. The moon is rising, and a better time is coming, a happier time, nearer, nearer. Perhaps we will live to see it. And if we do not, doesn't matter. Others will after us.
Anya! Anya! Where are you?
Faria, please.
I know. Oh, let's go to the river.
Yeah, then let's go.
Anya! Anya!
Smoking.
Man, that scene is hot. I've always thought that they go hook up after that, after the curtain falls.
The second time we played it, that's where it felt like we were.
That's where it was going.
But I mean, he is also being kind of a smug, intellectual prig, and really kind of patronizing and mansplaining at her about things that I don't know Anya's intelligence, but she should be perfectly intelligent enough to figure out. I mean, the only point is, I had a theory when I was reading it. I really didn't know. Is this a romantic scene?
Yeah.
Are they in love? Are they soulmates? Is Anya locked in with what Trofimov is saying? Are they in agreement? Or is he just blathering, city graduate student babble at her? Not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He's making some interesting and true points about the nature of the estate, but like telling somebody that the home that they love is just built by slaves is a risky thing. To tell somebody. And can come across as arrogant. And I really don't know which it's supposed to be. And I wonder if Chekhov knew.
That's one of my big questions. I mean, that was my question for you, is what is, and it's an unfair question about what's the intent, because I think that the reason I love these plays so much is I think that we haven't seen a literary black box as powerful as these plays since Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Where you can do anything with them, and it's amazing that you can have any number of productions of The Cherry Orchard or Vanya or The Seagull done in wildly different ways and all have incredible emotional power.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think it's an interesting story either way. There is a version, I don't know if it's just a comedy of set pieces and missed connections and absurd situations, kind of like a 1914 estate sitcom. To me, that's the most boring thing.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's kind of where Chekhov started, at least from what I understand, and I could be wrong about this, is that he started sketching out some characters and some scenes, and he's like, I have a pretty good sitcom here. But I think you're right. I think what gives it its power is the ambiguity and the fact that scene could be two idealistic lovers hooking up, or it could be a braggart, blowhard, trying and failing to impress a clever girl who sees right through him.
Yeah. It could be
both work on the page, I think.
Yeah. It's probably the mark of any good piece of theatrical writing that you could play it 100 different ways and it's going to work 100 different ways. I mean, like you said, it's, right at the beginning, it's going to be in the interpretation of this stuff that really, makes it sing or not, which is why I'm so fucking excited to watch Vanya on 42nd Street with you.
Well, yeah. And I think this is more so than most plays that I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
Even most contemporary plays. I mean, maybe some Mamet plays are like it, but to me, Mamet is all style and no substance,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm afraid that I find maybe his translation has some of that as well, that he seems to sort of enjoy the wordplay and is less interested in the soul of these characters.
And what he did with these is the way he adapted it, somebody else did the literal it's a literal translation, and then he rearranges the words.
But I imagine he was bringing in, years of having read different translations.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Into that, and then also having seen stage performances that he likes. But his thing is that the play is all about frustrated love, which you can read it that way. Mm-hmm. I see it. Most people seem to think the play is about the clash of the old and new in
Mm-hmm.
Russia, which to me that is like maybe a more interesting theme than frustrated love. But it also what resonates with me is the way in which Lyubov is kind of Hamlet-like.
Yeah.
And I agree that Hamlet has got that same black box quality, but I find Hamlet more sympathetic because his paralysis and anxiety and existential. Maybe I should be kinder to poor Lyubov, who's had a rough few years, but I feel like Hamlet's problems are deeper, and his ambivalence is grounded in a deeper set of problems. Mm-hmm. Like Lyubov could actually solve her problems. She could figure something out.
Well, and that's the tragedy of this one. They're both tragedies of inaction.
Yeah.
And you're right. Hamlet's problems are bigger, and he does his best to solve them.
Right.
And
he has no good options.
Right.
I feel like she has a few good options that she doesn't take. Hamlet's basically like, either let this grave injustice go or kill everybody.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some like, oh, he should have just gone to Fortinbras all along and reported his suspicions. Maybe that would have been smarter. Probably would have been smarter now that I think about it. Shakespeare!
But, the thing you said about frustrated love, like the frustrated love, the way that this play works as as both frustrated love and the clash of old and new is that the frustrated love that Lyubov has is for the past.
Yeah.
And that's the, and that's why the cherry orchard as done by the Muppets would be the most amazing thing of all time.
Well, and to me, the moments when, I think maybe this is why I didn't really get into the story that much, is the moments when she's expressing her love for the cherry orchard, to me, feel like the most tell not show. Mm-hmm. They're all sort of like, oh, the cherry orchard. Every morning I woke up with happiness. Oh, is that my mother? No, it just looks like the white dress of a woman. I'm just like, shut up. You're being so histrionic right now. It just felt over the top. And also, it's like, if you really care about it, what? And I do suppose maybe the device is that to save the cherry orchard, you have to cut down the cherry trees. Maybe that's the dramatic irony. But probably there's some fix. You could probably cut half of them down, or you could plant some new ones. They're not even making cherries anyway.
So, okay. What major literary rule does Chekhov break in this play? Is it A, Chekhov's gun? 2, rule of 1 or 3? Or 3, show, don't tell?
Well, I just said that he told and not showed, but I think the big rule is Chekhov's gun. Because
He's like,
the gun is pulled out and it does not go off. It's almost like Chekhov is taunting us.
I know, with Yeppy Kodov, which makes sense that he doesn't. But I'm just like, it's just such an amazing moment. I carry a loaded revolver with me at all times.
But I've told you my corollary to Chekhov's gun, which is Linklater's saw blade.
Yeah.
Just where something like that is revealed and it creates dramatic expectation that is unfulfilled.
Yes.
All right, so I got it. I got one.
Okay.
Woo!
You got it. Ding.
Okay. When this play was first put up by the Moscow Theater, it starred Konstantin Stanislavski, at the time Russia's greatest actor, perhaps still Russia's greatest actor, modern inventor of method acting. He portrayed Gaev. And when the play was being rehearsed, he had a major disagreement with Chekhov. Was the disagreement, A, Chekhov insisted the play was a comedy, and Stanislavski disagreed and insisted it was a tragedy. B, Stanislavski felt the student and Anya should marry, since they were the purest and kindest characters, and somebody should get a happy ending. C, Stanislavski felt that Lopakin should chop Gaev's favorite dresser up with one of the axes used to chop up the cherry orchard for greater dramatic effect.
That's great. It's like the cherry orchard in its early days makes a sharp turn into the Shining.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
If Gaev got killed by Lopakin's axe, that would be a badass play.
Oh my God, that would be incredible. I believe it is A.
Well, yeah, I didn't give you D, which is that Stanislavski felt that rather than a cherry orchard, the play should take place on a giant ring-shaped planet.
D.
That'd be pretty great too. The Cherry
That would
Planet.
be also pretty great. The Cherry Planet. The Cherry Ring.
It'd be like a Star Wars.
Like,
It's like, what other Star Wars, like, single ecosystem worlds can we come up with? A fruit orchard world.
A cherry planet, or there's just like a ring in space of floating cherries.
Yeah.
And Lubov is out there like, look at these beautiful cherries, and Fears is like, oh, things were better before FTL travel.
Fears translates very well to any story.
He sure does, yeah.
But I keep interrupting you. Give me the guess again.
I believe it is A.
You're correct. Chekhov insisted the play was a comedy, and Stanislavski disagreed and insisted it was a tragedy, which is an understandable disagreement since it's really both.
Yeah, since it's anything. And now I believe it gets the subtitle "A Tragicomedy in 4 Acts" is the way that it is sold now.
Huh. That is a portmanteau that probably did not exist in Chekhov's time.
I wonder when tragicomedy first makes its appearance in the dictionary. Well, next we are going to be watching a production of The Cherry Orchard. But we will put a note on how you're going to be able to watch this, because it's not going to be totally easy to watch it. But we are going to, there is a way to watch it for, I think, about $10 is what you kind of have to pony up to watch it. But it is totally worth it.
Upper Middle Brow is a small point production. Chris Bagg and Jesse Dukes are the Jewish Orchestra. Music by Ben Pajak and Jesse Dukes. Design and website by Chris Bagg. You can learn more about us and find our listener survey at uppermiddlebrow.com. And please review us in your podcast app so other people can find the show.
And as a reminder, everybody, Jesse and I are both writers and editors. We would love to help you with your projects, writing, podcasting, editing, whatever you are doing that is creative. We would love to ride shotgun on it with you. You can see some of our portfolios and learn more at our respective websites, chrisbagg.com and jessedukes.com.
Bonsoir.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Do svidanya, I guess, is goodbye in Russian.
Yeah. Do svidanya, I think. Yeah. I wouldn't have been able to come up with that.
I gotta run. I gotta.
All right. Have a great show.
Yeah. Don't say that.
Break a leg.
Thank you.
Snap a guitar string.
All right. See you next time. This was fun. I'll upload the audio
nice work.
soon. Yeah.